Every product design is a series of trade-offs. It's like a slider where you can push it either towards form or towards function. And it can be exciting when you push it way towards form. This is the iPhone Air. So Apple decided to make a ridiculously thin iPhone. Yes, it's thinner than a number 2 pencil, thinner than any previous iPhone that's ever been made, including the one that bent. It's thinner than the freaking iPod Touch. That is ridiculous. And this isn't simply an iPhone shrunken down. Apple has done a ton of rearranging parts and pieces inside the phone. They've squeezed a lot of the compute and memory and logic board up into the top of the phone and allowed a bit of a bulge, which they're calling a plateau, which leaves most of the slimmer bottom of the phone for just battery. The edges are nice and softly rounded, and the whole outside frame is shiny titanium, which picks up a ton of fingerprints, but also is remarkably durable. They 3D printed the USB Type-C port to fit, and all of the buttons and camera control, as thin as they are, go pretty much right up to the front and back edges of the phone. The end result is an iPhone that is noticeably thinner and lighter than it's been in a long time. It is super impressive and, importantly, deserving of the Air name. But it's not perfect. Of course it's not perfect. You wouldn't be watching this review if it was that easy. There are a bunch of trade-offs to making it this thin. It doesn't just get this thin magically without a bunch of sacrifices. Beauty is pain, after all. And so now that I've been using this phone for a couple of weeks, I'm just going to give you each of the trade-offs that Apple made and how much you'll actually notice them. And I have some small concerns, some medium concerns, and then the big concerns. So, small concern number 1 is they did remove the bottom speaker to achieve this. So most of the bottom of this phone is battery, but then those grills at the bottom of the Air are just for microphones. So the only speaker in this whole phone is up in that earpiece at the top. Couple things. A speaker that small is not going to get as loud, but there's also way less bass, so things are a bit tinny. But the worst case scenario is actually when you turn your phone landscape to watch a video or game or do something with stereo audio, in which case you'll probably notice all of the audio is coming from one side of the phone. And if you accidentally block that earpiece with your thumb, that's even more annoying. So the speakers are definitely not great, but they're acceptable for most everyday use. At least they're not horrible. You kind of just get used to it. So then the iPhone Air is eSIM only globally. This is again in an effort to make enough room for the battery. They're just getting rid of the slot where you normally have a little plastic SIM card. So this is a very direct trade-off to get more battery out of that saved space. Apple won't say exactly how much battery they gained back, but some of the numbers I'm starting to see pop up around the eSIM versus non-eSIM iPhones looks like there's around 200 milliamp hours of extra battery they're getting out of this. And believe me, I'll talk more about battery in a minute, but yeah, lots of people use regular SIM cards to this day. And I guess it's a bigger deal to me because I swap phones a lot, and there's lots of phones from like Huawei and Oppo that I wouldn't be able to get my SIM card into, and it doesn't work well with eSIM, so I really dislike it. But I suppose for the average person, they'll only notice this once or twice. Once when they switch to the phone, and then once when they move on to another phone. But speaking of carriers, the iPhone Air, unlike the rest of the iPhone 17s, does not support millimeter wave 5G. And the thing is, most people outside of the US have never used millimeter wave 5G. And most people in the US have also never used millimeter wave 5G. So, it's super convenient once in a while. When you have it, I found myself near a hotspot with a supporting device. And if I happen to have something to download in that moment, it's great. But that is so rare and so far between that you might as well not worry about it yet. The modem in the iPhone Air is brand new. It's the new C1X chip, and alongside Apple's new in-house designed N1 chip, which does all the networking, Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 6, and Thread, it's performed great. It does not seem to have any weaknesses in speed or coverage versus Qualcomm iPhones, previous iPhones with other modems, so that's been great to see. But then the USB-C port at the bottom of the Air is only USB 2 transfer speeds, so that's just dumb. But now let's get to the medium concerns. First of all, less cooling. Okay, so I did notice this phone getting hotter. It's running the more powerful A19 Pro chip with one less GPU core than the Pro phones, but it's a Pro chip, and the Pro phones are way thicker, and they're made of aluminum for better thermal conductivity. and they have a new vapor chamber to draw heat away from that chip and dissipate it through the body. The Air has none of that. And so I did have a few instances, especially early on, where I was doing a lot of the sustained activity and the back of the phone was heating up a lot in my hands, especially like right below the camera plateau. No question it's got to be throttling down that chip with any sort of heavy, sustained use. It's a little concerning, but the phone never actually did overheat or give me an overheating message, so I guess that is a good thing. So then there is the single camera. And I'm putting this in medium concerns, but it's really very much depends on the person. For some, it's just like, are you cool with this or not? Because a lot of people are currently using iPhones that have more than one camera. Lots of older iPhones even have that useful ultra wide, and most of the people thinking about buying this Air have those second cameras, even third cameras. And so the Air doesn't have an ultra wide, and I can't tell you how many times I went to go take a picture or something and then realized I can't switch to the ultra wide. And there's also obviously no zoom as well. I will say Apple makes a big deal about their processing pipeline for the 2x crops on the Fusion camera, so the middle 12 megapixels for a 2x photo having a decent quality shot, but that still doesn't replace having an actual quality zoom camera, and that's especially noticeable when you try to zoom in. I'd say anywhere past about 5x, the quality really starts to drop off in all shooting scenarios. All that said, the one camera you do get is really good. It's essentially the same as the base iPhone 17, and in the world of $1,000 phones, it is right up there with the best. The selfie camera too, which I'll talk more about in the base iPhone 17 review, genuinely innovative and dramatically better than previous iPhones. I think casual photo and video takers will actually mostly be fine with this single camera solution in a vacuum, but we're not in a vacuum and there are other options out, and you just have to know that there are other phones that cost $1,000 that have way more capable camera systems that can do zoom, that can do ultra wide, that can do macros. This won't do that. So for me, someone who relies on the cameras on the phone a lot, this is one of the reasons I'm not going to be switching to or dailying the Air. But for your parents or someone you know who takes most of their photos and videos on the main camera all the time anyway, they'll probably be totally fine with this. And this was a carefully considered cut from Apple to get there. But now my two main concerns with the iPhone Air, and probably for most people, the durability and the battery. And some of this is actually kind of shocking. It turns out the iPhone Air is not just a survivor of the famous jerry-rig everything bend test, it's literally one of the most impressively durable smartphones of all time. I'm not exaggerating, it's kind of ridiculous. I think in most people's concerns when seeing a piece of hardware this thin, naturally they're thinking, oh, am I gonna break this? Am I gonna snap it in half? And the answer, it turns out pretty definitively, is no. This is not any less durable than a normal smartphone. The titanium frame can withstand more bending than any human can put their mortal hands through, and it'll snap back to flat even if you do get it to flex. And you can almost undoubtedly sit on the phone for an extended period of time like an insane person, and it will survive. It's still IP68 water and dust resistant. Dunk it underwater if you want to. And the ceramic shield too on the front and back is actually even more scratch resistant than previous versions. I know they say that a lot, oh, this one's the most scratch resistant yet, but it's to the point where it didn't even show the normal scratches at level 6 with deeper grooves at level 7 on Zach's famous test. It passed even beyond normal smartphones. Now, of course, glass is glass and glass still breaks. That is, you could still drop this phone and shatter the front or back glass, of course. But I think we all went into this thinking that the durability would be a major weakness of this phone, and it turns out it's one of the biggest strengths, which is crazy. Turns out those engineers and material science people over there are actually pretty good at what they're doing. Or maybe they had some incentive to not repeat a certain past incident. And then it also turns around and gets a 7 out of 10 from iFixit for repairability, and still retains dual entry when you go in to repair it, so you can take just the front glass or just the back glass off. And Apple posted all their disassembly guides on day 1. Kudos. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that through all my throwing it in a Frisbee bag and tossing it on a chair next to me and all of the abuse I've put this phone through, it hasn't even come close to breaking or bending. So that brings us to the last main concern, battery. So the battery on the iPhone Air is pretty weak, and there's no getting around that. Remember earlier this year, though, when I said one of the big pillars of 2025 smartphones was going to be these new higher density silicon carbon batteries? Well, it turns out Two of the biggest phone manufacturers out there, Samsung and Apple, well, they just didn't want to take the dive on that quite yet on any of their phones. So not only is this phone thinner than ever with less room inside for battery than ever, but it's also not even a special high-density battery to make up for it. So the result is this big, bright, gorgeous 6.5-inch 120 hertz OLED display being powered by a battery the same size as the one in the iPhone 11. I will say parts have gotten more efficient, right? So like the display can throttle down all the way to 1 hertz, and the A19 Pro chip can underclock super well. So it's not a disaster, but I'm giving the battery about a C-, ending the day with like 15% left in low power mode in normal use with 4 hours of screen on time for a brand new phone is not that great. Makes me concerned for how this will look in 3 or 4 years down the road. It's actually kind of similar to the camera situation. Like there are lots of people who are now, today, might be you, using a phone with a big battery that was awesome when you first got it, but now, years later, if you're getting to the end of the day and it's dying and you realize you need a battery upgrade, the Air is probably not the phone you should be getting. But if you are getting to year 3 or 4 of your phone and battery is not an issue and you feel like you're a pretty light user, then the Air could be fine for you. So to be specific, for my own use, like standby time I noticed was pretty good, like it is on so many other iPhones, but this Pro chip can spike up pretty quickly. So even with like some screen off stuff like wireless CarPlay, for example, it would take big chunks out of my battery. Anytime the phone was doing anything heavy, battery beware. And then this phone also charges slower than the rest of the 17 lineup, which makes it even more annoying. So if you're a heavy user like me, well, you literally just end up keeping it on a wireless charger as much as possible. It's annoying. It was just very annoying, to be honest. And that's sort of the two things that made it a deal breaker for me, is the cameras and the battery. The difference, though, between those is the battery, you can kind of work around it. The camera kind of can't. Also, pretty classic Apple move to make the problem and then sell you the solution. So this is the MagSafe battery they launched alongside the Air. It's sold separately for $100, and it's also, just to be honest, not a very good accessory. It turns out it's basically the exact same battery that's in the iPhone Air, but only charges it to about 65% because of the heat loss during wireless charging. Not a great deal. So originally I said there were basically 2 ways to look at the iPhone Air. One is it's just Apple trying something new, throwing it out the wall to see if it sticks. Oh, maybe people like this. Or it is a long, premeditated preview at the future of all smartphones when they're all this thin. But I lied. There's actually a third way to look at this phone, and that is as one half of the upcoming foldable iPhone that we all expect as early as next year. Because it's easy to be impressed by the thinness of the iPhone Air, but if you've paid attention to the rest of the smartphone world lately, each half of a good folding phone is often even thinner than this iPhone. It's obviously a huge priority for them because they're trying to get to the same thickness as a normal phone when closed, so double their typical Z-axis. So all of this work, all of this incredible reorganization of the inside of the phone and the components and the miniaturization of parts and the efficiency maxing with their in-house developed parts like N1 chip and C1X, all of that effort is absolutely geared towards seeing if they can make the first ever truly new form factor of an iPhone, maybe since the 10, one that folds in half. And it just so happens to enable this really thin form factor Air phone that they'll make in the meantime. Kind of the exact same way we got a Galaxy S25 Edge, and then a few months later, got the Z Fold 7, which was an ultra-thin foldable from Samsung. So I'm very much looking forward to that crazy foldable iPhone when it comes, and what will they call it, and what software it'll run, and all that other stuff. But for now, this one, it's an iPhone still. You know, every year we get the new iOS and all of its features, and the clear theme, and visual intelligence and all the iPhone stuff, and I review that separately. And you guys already know about all that stuff. And then we get the new iPhone's announcement, and there are almost 0 new actual features here other than the selfie camera. But now it's like I'm reviewing, you know, the box that iOS comes in, you know? And I think this package, as cool as it is, like this will speak to plenty of people. It's beautiful. It's super trim. It's super light in the hand, which is underrated. People are going to pick this phone up and immediately love it. But I think maybe the best thing about the iPhone Air is actually how much it seems to have freed Apple up to make the Pro phones even more pro, which are now thicker and have more battery and heavier and bigger cameras and all unibody metal now. That's the one I'll be daily driving. Stay tuned for the full review, of course, on the Pro phones next. But hey, if you are planning on picking up an iPhone Air, or literally any other iPhone, or any Android phone for that matter, then channel sponsor Ridge has you covered. And I know Apple made their MagSafe wireless charger, but trust me, you'd rather have Ridge's wireless charger, because this power bank is 10,000 milliamp hours, so that's good for about 3 full charges. Plus, it can actually do other things. So it can charge your Apple Watch. It has 2 built-in cables, USB Type-C at 20 watts, and Lightning for any legacy Apple devices. And it even has a kickstand built in to pop up your phone and watch videos while you're charging. It comes in matte black, matte olive, or Basecamp orange to match your style. So whether you're upgrading to the iPhone Air or literally grabbed any other new phone, that Ridge power bank has you covered. So check it out today at ridge.com/mkbhd for 10% off. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.